Jack was a college student in Oregon, ready to start his second year and eager to live off campus. Like many students, he was on a tight budget, so when he found a rental listed at a price well below what others in the area were asking, he jumped on it. The apartment was old but charming, with high ceilings and vintage fixtures. The only catch was that he would be sharing the house with someone else, Greg, a middle-aged man who lived in the basement. Jack met Greg only briefly when he moved in. Greg seemed quiet and kept to himself, which was fine by Jack. As long as Greg stayed in his basement space, there shouldn't be any issues. However, the landlord had mentioned something odd during the initial tour. Greg rarely left the basement and didn't really interact with previous tenants. Jack found that strange, but after a long day of moving in, he was too tired to think much about it. In the first few weeks, everything seemed normal. Greg was indeed elusive, and Jack rarely heard or saw him. Sometimes he'd hear faint noises from downstairs, things moving, footsteps, but they were easy to ignore. However, as time passed, Jack began noticing subtle changes around the apartment. Little things would go missing. At first, it was small stuff: a mug, a fork, a dish towel. They'd always turn up in odd places like the bathroom or the hallway, and Jack figured he was just being forgetful. One evening, Jack came home late from class. He had pulled an all-nighter studying for midterms, and all he wanted to do was sleep. As he approached the front door, he noticed it was slightly ajar. His heart skipped a beat. He was positive he had locked it when he left. Cautiously, he stepped inside, calling out for Greg. No answer. Jack checked every room, but nothing seemed out of place. Except for one thing. The attic door, which had always been locked, was now open. Jack had never been in the attic before. It was an old house, and the landlord had told him there was nothing up there but dust and cobwebs. But now the door hung open, revealing a dark staircase leading up to the attic. His first instinct was to shut the door and forget about it. But curiosity got the better of him. Armed with his phone flashlight, Jack slowly climbed the creaky stairs. The air was thick with dust, and the wooden floorboards groaned under his weight. As he reached the top, his flashlight illuminated something that made his blood run cold. In the corner of the attic was a bedroll, old blankets and pillows arranged in a makeshift sleeping area. There were food wrappers, empty water bottles, and a pile of clothes. Jack's clothes. Someone had been living in the attic. Right above him, Jack's mind raced. Had Greg been sneaking into the attic, or was it someone else? His pulse quickened as he heard footsteps creaking behind him. Spinning around, he pointed the flashlight toward the stairs, catching a glimpse of Greg standing at the bottom, his face hidden in the shadows. "You weren't supposed to find this," Greg said, his voice low and strained. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. Without thinking, he bolted down the stairs, brushing past Greg, and ran out of the house. He didn't stop running until he reached a nearby gas station, where he frantically called the police. By the time authorities arrived, Greg was gone. The basement was empty, and there was no trace of anyone ever living there. The police found Greg's identification, but according to their records, Greg had been missing for over a year, reported missing by his family after he failed to show up for a family reunion. No one knew where he had been or what he had been doing. Jack never went back to the house. He couldn't shake the feeling that whoever, or whatever, had been living in the attic was still watching him. Even now, he wonders if Greg was ever truly alone in that basement, or if something much more sinister was at play. Anna moved to Chicago in 2017, eager to start her new job and excited to explore the city. She found an apartment through a roommate-finding website, and the arrangement seemed perfect. The apartment was spacious, the rent was affordable, and her roommate Claire was friendly and accommodating. Claire was a bit reserved, but Anna didn't mind. She valued her privacy, and as long as Claire paid her share of the rent and kept the place clean, Anna didn't see any issues. In the first few weeks, everything went smoothly. Claire mostly kept to her room, only emerging to use the kitchen or bathroom. At first, Anna appreciated the quietness, but soon she began to notice odd behavior. Claire rarely left the apartment. She never mentioned a job or family, and Anna never saw her on the phone or having visitors. Even more unsettling was the way Claire seemed to move around the apartment at night when Anna was asleep. It started with little things. Anna would wake up in the morning to find the refrigerator door left open or the television on in the living room, despite knowing she had turned everything off before going to bed. One night, she woke up to a faint rustling sound outside her door. She lay still in bed, listening as the sound moved down the hallway and into the living room. Her heart raced, but she convinced herself it was just Claire getting a midnight snack. Things escalated when Anna noticed a pattern. Every night around 2 a.m., she'd hear Claire's door creak open, followed by the soft padding of feet down the hallway. Sometimes Anna would find Claire standing in the kitchen, staring out the window, motionless. When Anna tried to talk to her, Claire would act startled, as if she didn't even realize she had been standing there. One night, unable to sleep, Anna decided to stay up and see if the strange behavior continued. At exactly 2:05 a.m., she heard Claire's door open. The soft footsteps moved down the hall, but this time, they stopped right outside Anna's door. Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she lay there, frozen. Then, slowly, the door handle began to turn. Anna shot up in bed, her heart racing. But before she could say anything, the door stopped moving. The footsteps retreated back down the hallway, and Claire's door clicked shut. Shaken, Anna confronted Claire the next morning. But Claire seemed genuinely confused, claiming she had no memory of walking around at night. She brushed it off as sleepwalking, though Anna wasn't convinced. Determined to get some answers, Anna decided to dig a little deeper. That evening, when Claire was out for her usual late-night stroll, Anna entered her room. She had never been inside before, but now she felt like she needed to know more about this strange woman she was living with. What she found sent shivers down her spine. The walls of Claire's room were covered in photographs, hundreds of them. But these weren't just random snapshots. They were photos of Anna. Some were taken while she was asleep in her bed, others while she was in the kitchen, brushing her teeth or reading on the couch. Every moment of Anna's life in the apartment had been captured by Claire's camera. But that wasn't the worst part. In the center of the room was a large chalk circle, surrounded by candles, with strange symbols drawn inside it. At the center of the circle was a photograph of Anna, one she had never seen before. The photo showed her lying in bed, with a shadowy figure standing over her. Panicked, Anna rushed out of the apartment, calling her friend to come pick her up. When she returned the next day with the police, Claire was gone. Her room was completely empty, as if she had never lived there. The landlord confirmed that no one named Claire had ever been on the lease, and there were no records of anyone matching her description living in the building. To this day, Anna doesn't know who or what Claire was. She moved out of the apartment shortly after the incident, but she still checks her door every night, just in case. David had always been cautious about who he lived with, especially in New York City. When he found an apartment in Brooklyn through Craigslist in 2019, he was excited but also wary. The price was right, and his potential roommate, Kevin, seemed normal enough during their initial meeting. Kevin was quiet, polite, and mentioned that he worked from home as a freelance graphic designer. They barely interacted, which suited David just fine. He wasn't looking for a best friend, just a place to live. For the first month, things went smoothly. Kevin kept to himself, mostly staying in his room or sitting in the living room late at night, watching TV with the volume low. But soon, David began to notice strange behavior. One night, David came home from work and found Kevin sitting in the living room, staring at a blank television screen. He was completely still, his eyes wide and unblinking. When David asked if everything was okay, Kevin slowly turned his head, smiled faintly, and said, "I'm just waiting." Confused but too tired to ask more, David went to bed. That's when the real nightmares began. David started waking up in the middle of the night to strange noises. It sounded like whispering, but the voices were muffled and indistinct, as if they were coming from behind the walls. Sometimes he'd hear scratching, like nails scraping against wood. On more than one occasion, he woke up to the sound of heavy breathing right outside his door. He began locking his bedroom door at night, just in case. One night, around 3 a.m., David woke up to a loud thud. His heart raced as he sat up in bed, listening intently. The apartment was silent, but something didn't feel right. He quietly got out of bed and pressed his ear to the door. That's when he heard it, slow, deliberate breathing, right outside his door. David's pulse quickened. He stayed completely still, hoping whoever it was would go away. But then, a soft voice broke the silence. "I know you're awake." David's breath caught in his throat. It was Kevin's voice, but it sounded different, deeper, almost inhuman. The breathing continued, slow and steady, as if Kevin was waiting for him to open the door. Terrified, David waited until the breathing finally stopped and the footsteps retreated down the hallway. He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, David decided he couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. He packed up his belongings while Kevin was out, leaving only a note explaining that he had to move for personal reasons. He couldn't bring himself to confront Kevin face to face. When David returned a week later to collect the rest of his things, the apartment was completely empty. Kevin had vanished without a trace. The landlord told David that Kevin had never been on the lease and there were no records of anyone matching Kevin's description living in the building. David never found out who or what Kevin really was. But he still remembers that voice, whispering through the door, "I know you're awake." These stories serve as a haunting reminder that the people we trust to share our homes with might not always be what they seem. Whether it's a secret attic dweller, a phantom roommate, or someone hiding something much darker, one thing is clear. The real horror might be closer than you think. So the next time you're looking for a roommate, make sure they're not bringing more than just their suitcase. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more chilling content. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next adventure.